Hey, what's going on, geeks? Maxusthebeast is here, and welcome back to Storytime. In this episode, we're going back to a topic I have covered before. However, it has been quite a while, and my experiences with this particular topic have changed drastically since the last time I covered this. Of course, if you've read the title, then you should be fairly acquainted with what's about to happen, but for those of you who don't read, this particular episode is going back to talking about my experiences at work. Now, as a quick, refresher for those of you who may remember the last time I covered this particular topic, the last time I covered my experiences with work, I was not actually in the workforce. Rather, I worked really sporadically for a couple neighbors. And so I shared experiences where I worked taking care of animals and house sitting and all that stuff. Decent positions and good work. But again, I hadn't been actually out in the workforce until relatively recently. So for those of you who don't know, which is probably most of you because I may have mentioned this in a stream or two ago. I don't know, I don't talk about it too much when I'm live and on the air, but for those of you who don't know, I work at an assisted living facility, which is kind of like a nursing home. It does have a nursing home component attached to it. However, the building that I specifically work in, I am a receptionist at a building which the residents of the building, it's more of apartments to these people, where sure, some of them may need help with certain things and may not be the best at being able to live alone nowadays, but they are still mostly independent. They are able to go out and do things out in public. Some of them have their own vehicles, so they are capable of driving. They are still in sound mind, relatively sound body, and that's that. They only need some, occasional assistance. But, we have some instances where things do get a little bit hectic. The campus, which is what it is, the entire facility is sort of like on a campus type thing where there are multiple buildings with each with different purposes. There is an actual nursing home, and there's also a rehab center as well as a mental health care unit for people with dementia or Alzheimer's. And in order to get into that particular building, the one for the mental help institution, it's not like an asylum or anything, it's just for, again, people with Alzheimer's or dementia and that sort of thing. In order to get in there, you have to sign in my building. There's a similar policy for people trying to visit residents in my building, or in the building that I work in. Same kiosk is also used for employees to check in the mornings, or whatever they come in. Now, it's my responsibility to help newcomers through the process, because it is an automated system, it's technology, so technology can be finicky. There is a thermometer on the machine. It's one of those that you have to lean in and it automatically scans you as you lean into it. But of course, because it's technology, it can be finicky. And as such, we do have regular oral thermometers available. So sometimes it's my responsibility to take people's temperatures if the machine is acting up, just to make sure that the machine is accurate and whatnot, in case it does give the reading of a fever. So this one afternoon, the reason I go into all this detail is because that's why I have to go up there and help people check in, just in case there's an issue with the machine, be it they can't access something well enough, or that the machine labels somebody as having a fever. You need to always do a double check to make sure that they do or don't. In any case, a pair of gentlemen walk in one afternoon. I'd say that they would be in their 50s or 60s. And they're there to visit somebody over in the mental unit. Or I guess this is referred to the memory unit. Whatever the case, they're there to visit somebody over there. And they asked where they need to go to check in. I guided them to it. It was their first time using the thing in a while, so I went up there to help walk them through in case they didn't remember. So the first guy goes over to the kiosk and starts doing his thing, but his friend's just sitting there staring at me. I don't really think too much of it for the moment. I'm just focused on being available to answer any questions or to assist if the need arises. Well, his friend walks over and holds out his hand like he wants a handshake. So I'm like, well, whatever, it's still COVID and all that, so I'll just be extra safe and sanitized after they leave. Well, this dude grabs my hand like he's going for a handshake. And then he grabs my wrist. He says one word to me. Fists. At this point, I swear my body's kind of going into shock. Or something, because I had no reaction to this. I had no way of articulating what was going on. I just kind of accepted that this is my life now. And made a fist. He then took his free hand and slapped it against the side of my closed fist. He then goes, fingernail. After which, he wanted to see my fingernails. That was weird. He rubs the palms of his hand across my fingernails. And then goes, I like your fists. During this whole process, another coworker had come in to sign in for the day. And he lowers his mask for a second and mouths, what is going on? I just shrug my shoulders. Again, my body is just not having this, and I'm unable to think coherently. But after the dude says, I like your fists, he backs away and goes over to the coworker, and my man's expression changes from pure confusion to utter terror within seconds, because the man is now doing the same thing to him as he just did to me. All the while, the first dude is still signing in somehow, even though these COVID questions and the temperature scanning should not take this long. But he's still signing in. Not a care in the world to what's going on over here. Both myself and another employee have been, for lack of a better term, had their hands molested by some stranger. And it seemed to be business as usual. The line that was drawn for what was considered too much was when the dude walks over to a painting on the wall and tries to adjust it. The painting wasn't crooked or anything, but he just wanted to move it or something. I don't know. But apparently that was a no-go. Just accosting two random people who work at this facility and touch their hands up and say that they like people's fists. That's normal, civil, and whatnot. But touching photographs? Nah. No, that's the line in the sand. That's the no-go. Fun fact. I was going to make this video sooner. And I was going to conclude this segment by saying, well, luckily I have never seen these people again afterwards. Well, I scrapped the initial video. And the day after, I worked. The day after I made the original draft for this video, I went in for work. And would you believe who walked in the door that day? I happened to jinx it, so that on that particular day, that dude showed up again. He wanted a handshake again. I had an idea, I knew where it was going. He asked to see my fist again. This time just looked at them, nodded, and then moved on. So, while still strange, definitely far tamer than the first go-round. But whatever the case, in both circumstances, that had to be the strangest experience I have ever had with a stranger. I hope nothing tops that, because that was an experience I could have gone my entire life without having. Another day, there was a person, we have, of course, being assisted living care facility. There, we have to have something fun for the residents to do. So we have an activities staff who host various, activities. And sometimes they need to print off flyers to advertise upcoming events, or print off extra activity sheets and whatnot for the actual events themselves. And as such, my desk is usually a hub for these people who need to print off things. That's fine. But this one day, activities person came down, asked to print off some flyers for one of the events for the day. And while doing so, we get a phone call. I could barely understand the dude on the other end until he adjusted his phone for a second, and then he was audible. But he asked what the facility's policy on dogs was. When I was briefed for the position, there are a lot of things I just was not told. Dog policy was one such tidbit that I was not informed on. So I had no idea. Luckily, there was another person who may know right beside me. So I asked the activities person, saying, "Hey, do you by any chance know the dog policy?" She goes, "No, I do not." Well, that's just wonderful. No one knows. No one here knows anyway, because the higher-ups weren't in for the day. It was just me and just regular staff. There wasn't anybody who knew. Activities person went to try to find somebody and ask a couple other people if they knew, and the answer was no. We ended up putting the person on hold, calling my, at the time, boss, and asking him, "Hey, what's the dog policy?" While the activities person was on the phone with the boss, I was still talking to the person over the phone, and the boss asked what the dog's name is. Ask the person what the dog's name is. He tells me. I regurgitate the information again. And apparently the dog was, in fact, on a registered list somewhere, and so was permitted to visit. The next day, I had a printed out sheet of all the registered dogs. So for future reference, I would have that in case someone else wanted to bring their pet. I would have their proof of registration available. The final story for this particular episode is going to be a bit of a doozy. So brace yourselves. So attached to the facility is an actual set of apartments. And the apartment people, as they are lovingly referred to as, they call in lunch orders from the cafeteria in my building, which supplies food for residents in the building itself and for these apartment residents, who then come down and pick up their lunch. Well, as of recent, the COVID restrictions have changed around again. Against me, I'm not really briefed on a lot of the time. It usually just kind of happens. So I show up one day and then there's 5 or 6 different changes I wasn't aware of the weekend or two prior. But whatever the case, the policy had changed up again, leading to the apartment residents being no longer granted access to the building at lunchtime. Now, ordinarily, there are some apartment residents who come into the building to eat their lunches, They eat in the building's cafeteria and socialize with residents and with each other and whatnot. Whereas others, we push a cart with all their meals out in front of the door to the building. So those people will just walk up, grab their food, and go on their merry way. However, nobody at this point was permitted in. At least none of the apartment people. We could still have visitors, and then, of course, residents and employees would be able to enter the building. But the apartment residents could not. The cart instead was pushed up to a community center, which would host a bunch of events at times. Now, what was kind of nice about having the cart in front of the building is that from my desk, I could see it. So if there were any problems with any orders or anything of that nature, because I'm taking lunch orders directly, so I'm in charge of writing these people's orders down to the T, and it would be helpful for me to be able to help out, being able to see what's going down. However, the community center is a good distance away from me, and I, as such, cannot see the carts. I cannot see the people coming to pick up their meals. So if there's a problem, I cannot get to it. Now, the reason this is important is because there was a bit of a mix-up one day. You see, this one particular day, a resident orders a very specific meal. There are 2 menus for apartment people to order off of. There are the daily specials, which they have to ask to have that read off to them. That's on my desk, and I will read off to them the specific special meal for the day. And then there's I'm not entirely sure if it's something online or if it's something in a book or something. But there is a set in stone menu that they can order their food off of. And this one resident ordered food off of that, which is, again, no problem. I write down the order as instructed. Then the cutoff point for meal orders, for food orders to be called in, is 11:30 a.m. After that, residents can no longer order their lunches, and what's done is done. Then lunch is served anywhere from 12:15 to 12:30. And then that lunch period typically stretches for like half an hour or so, once the lunches have been served. In any case, I place this dude's order, orders food, the food's in, and move on with my day. Well, about 12:45, about 15 minutes after lunches went out, a very disgruntled resident walks in, complaining that he couldn't find his food. I called the kitchen and asked if by any chance they had his meal, and they said that they had already taken the meal out, and that the meal was on the cart and was taken over to the community center with the rest of them. The feller was adamant that his meal was not on the cart, and that it was missing. I called again, just making sure, like, hey, by any chance, this is a very specific item. I asked him to clarify what he ordered. I asked again, hey, is by any chance you have this specific meal back there? And they said no, that it was, again, already taken over. And that the running theory between both kitchen staff and the person was that somebody had taken the food. Well, at this point, the situation kind of fell into the hands of whoever may have taken the food. That we just have to trust that the person who mistakenly took it would recognize their error and out of the goodness of their heart may return the lunch. This didn't happen. But all the while I was like apologizing and stuff like this never happened before. Because usually I have had issues where lunches got mixed up. However, it was usually a simple fix, like the lunch was still in bag, just hanging out in the kitchen, that just hadn't been put on the cart for some reason. So just request, hey, is this person's meal back there? Usually it's a yes, and then they bring the meal out. In this case, I never had an incident where the meal just vanished into thin air. Well, the dude just wouldn't take sorry for an answer, saying that sorry didn't fill his stomach, and just asking over and over and over again what he was going to eat. He started trying to compare me to other receptionists, saying that, oh, everyone else is so cordial and trying to help. And again, I was trying to find answers. I even got up and went to the kitchen and just started asking questions and wasn't getting anywhere. Because again, if someone else took the food, there's nothing the kitchen can do about it. I didn't know what their resources looked like at that time, and I wasn't going to put any pressure on them. But while I had gone over to the kitchen, another resident had decided that she wanted to make a phone call. This wouldn't be a problem if the phone behind the desk wasn't a company phone. This particular phone was connected to specific rooms. So as she was trying to put in the area code and the phone number, she was dialing random rooms who knows where in the facility. That's problematic for obvious reasons. She also is potentially has Alzheimer's but isn't over in the memory care unit, and is incredibly hard at hearing. You will literally have to be centimeters from her face screaming at her for her to hear you. She cannot hear for the life of her and is also incredibly stubborn, which can lead to some interesting problems. I started realizing what's going on, tried to cancel the call, and then she got angry about it, like, you're canceling the phone calls, it won't ring because you're canceling the calls. I tried to explain to her that this wasn't your regular phone, and that she couldn't make regular phone calls on it. That instead, this was connected to a series of different residents' rooms, as well as different departments across the campus. So what she was calling wasn't her son, but instead could have been some employee someplace or some random resident just getting phone call after phone call from her, saying that it was the front desk. But again, she couldn't hear or understand, or just got confused or something, and just refused to get out from behind the desk. Thankfully, another resident had walked in, was overhearing the entire situation, and started trying to negotiate with her to try to get her out from behind the desk. Eventually, she convinces her that she's going to call her son on her cell phone, and this convinces the lady to walk out from behind the desk and walk over into the corner of the foyer area with her so they could make that phone call. All the while, there's yelling going on because one of the kitchen staff had come down and tried to resolve the situation with the resident with no food. So there's this screaming match going on between resident and kitchen staff because the resident is being really rude to everybody. I get being hungry, and being hungry could lead to some negative feelings, but don't be rude to people, especially the people making your food and trying to make your food. And then don't start trying to compare me, who I'm trying to do my best here. Don't start trying to compare me to others. I'm doing my best. But they eventually make him another meal, and he moves on with his day. We move on with ours. But the person from the kitchen had come down. She was curious as to what happened up at the community center. So she walks over there. A couple residents who were eating their lunch were still hanging out at the community center, just socializing. So she asks them if they had happened to see this particular person get his meal, or if someone had taken his meal. And they said that he had walked up all in a huff, very angry, just yelling at everything because he couldn't find his food. So, a couple ladies took pity on him. And because they had relatives visiting later in the day who were planning on bringing them supper, they were willing to make a sacrifice for lunch so that this resident could get his food. And so he got 2 lunches from these very nice ladies who offered up their own food for him. He took their food and then walked down to my building and starts complaining that he didn't get his food when he's just sitting on top of these 2 other meals given to him out of pity. And then the kitchen staff makes him another meal. So at the end of all of this, he's sitting on 3 separate lunches. I have no idea what happened to his original meal. Whether it was stolen or if he just missed it or what, but whatever the case with the original meal, he still somehow weaseled his way into getting 3 meals. I have no idea why. I don't know this person's situation. He could be, there's a reason why they live where they live. And again, they're all decent people for the most part. They're all really nice. Usually very nice. I enjoy what I do because I enjoy helping people. And these people are, again, friendly. But there are instances like this where it just becomes arduous sometimes. I will admit I did have a bit of a panic attack during this whole ordeal. It was just a lot of yelling, and after a stressful week of college, I didn't know what to do with the whole thing. But after seeing the worst in people, sometimes you often get to see the best. The lunch staff person noticed that I wasn't doing the best. And after I explained that I was dealing with some anxiety and panic stuff, she offered to watch over the desk for a few minutes so I could step out and get some air. While I didn't take her up on this offer, I did take her up on the offer of a drink and some food to help with the blood sugar. She didn't have to do any of that, but she did because she wanted to. She felt like it was the right thing to do. And I really appreciated that. Which, again, while that experience overall wasn't the best, it did solidify why I do like working there. And that is because there are so many just great human beings there, both resident and fellow co-worker. Again, you sometimes see the best and worst in people. Sometimes even at close to the same time, and that's exactly what happened here. So I'm thankful for both my coworker who helped out with this whole thing, as well as that one resident who offered to assist with the whole phone scenario. Both coworker and the resident played an incredibly important role in this whole situation, and I am incredibly grateful to both for their effort they played, and have in subsequent encounters been able to do my best, not make the same mistakes again, and try to go above and beyond in my customer service. But in any case, those are just a few of the stories I wanted to share. I'll save some more and gather some more for future editions of the Stories from Work edition of Storytime. I do plan on covering some more unique story topics again, not just work stuff. So we'll get into that again at some point in time. But for the moment, I just wanted to show you. I just wanted to share some of the moments from work that I just found particularly interesting and hope that you did as well. Thank you all for tuning into this video, and welcome back to Storytime, a series that I haven't done in quite some time. I'm going to try to make this a bit more regular, so stay tuned for that. Thanks again for watching, folks, and as always, Maxusthebeast is out.